Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another edition of AOBO Online with your most favorite instructor, Mr. Remke. In this section of the course, we are going to cover the Wisconsin used vehicle disclosure. Motor vehicle trade practices are regulated by Wisconsin statute at sub 139. So the trade or the handing off of a vehicle to one party to another, selling as a term, are regulated by ATSUP 139. As a portion of ATSUP 139, one of the subsections states that motor vehicles sold by a licensed dealer in the state of Wisconsin must perform an inspection including a road test and accurately fill out a disclosure form. A copy of that disclosure must be posted on the vehicle. And this is all for consumer protection. I've been told that this is one of the strictest states as far as disclosing the condition of a used motor vehicle from a responsible dealer or a licensed dealer. So it's kind of neat. Our state is very, very on the top and on the forefront of consumer protection, and it's also there when you go to trade a vehicle or sell a vehicle through a dealership network. As technicians, we may be responsible for performing the inspection, the road test, and fill out the disclosure form, so we thought it'd be very important to cover that in this course as part of the vehicle equipment or the vehicle units. Every detail counts on these particular inspections. Your facility could be legally responsible if there was a mistake on the form, so it's very important to understand the form and know what is legal, what's not legal, and how do we disclose these properly. As I had mentioned, motor vehicle trade practices are regulated by ATSUP 139. So I do have a link here in the PowerPoint, or if you want to click out onto the PDF, whichever one, to take you out to ATSUP 139. I would not expect you to read every single word, every single detail like we have in previous sections, but please just take a few moments and click on the highlights, click on the applicability, click on definitions, and really we are going to focus on subsection number 4, the disclosure of the condition of the motor vehicle. But take a few minutes and just poke and prod around ATSUP 139 and come back when you're ready to move on to a new subject. So one big thing that you will definitely see as you are poking around ATSUP 139, all private party vehicle sales in the state of Wisconsin are as is. So they basically really put their money into licensing dealers, making sure that dealers' practices are regulated and ethical. So if you are purchasing a vehicle from a private party, it is as is, so kind of a buyer's beware. Out on Blackboard, in the course materials folder, underneath the Wisconsin used vehicle disclosure section of it, there are a few documents in there, and 2 of them are about used vehicle buying tips, and one of them is actually right from ATSUP from the state of Wisconsin. So take just a few minutes, go into Blackboard course materials and read these used vehicle purchasing tips or guides. They have some really good details in there, and it will also highlight in there, in Wisconsin, private party vehicle sales are as is. There is no kind of statutes backing those up. As is, and they just have some good tips about buying used vehicles. When you're done with that, come on back to the virtual lecture and we'll move on. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's break down the Wisconsin Buyer's Guide form. These forms are available in paper form to the dealership or available in electronic version as well. I have tended to notice that a lot of dealerships are shifting to filling these out electronically and then printing a copy and posting it in the vehicle instead of making this all paper and pencil from the beginning. Helps keep them clean, helps basically keep records, so it is legal to do either one. What we're going to do is just quickly break this down section by section, so we'll look at the front and then we'll look at the back, and just kind of look at things that have to be on this particular disclosure form as they're selling used vehicles. So the first section is going to be up in the top, kind of top right area. It's going to be a portion that requires us to put the year, make, and model of the vehicle, the engine size, the number of cylinders, the VIN number, the drive type, the dealership name, the transmission type, and then way on the right hand side, the price, the service fee, and stock numbers, basically just kind of identifying that vehicle itself. Second portion of that disclosure form that we see is in the kind of top left, which is vehicle history. If it had been used for personal use, business use, a lease return, a rental, a demonstrator, an executive, or titled or transferred to insurance company, history not known or other, basically needs to have a check mark in there to let that potential customer that's buying the used vehicle know what the history, what was this vehicle used as. We also must disclose any title brands that that vehicle would have. So if it's a rebuilt salvage, if it's a damaged claim paid or a flood damaged vehicle, maybe a lemon law buyback from the manufacturer, we must disclose any of the title brands that would come about on the vehicle. Moving on to the next section is the odometer reading. So we need to basically get that odometer reading. And there's just a few boxes for us to check. So we could mark down there the actual odometer reading. We could also mark down it's in excess of mechanical limits. So that would be like the Toyota Priuses that we have, a few of them in the fleet. They are basically mechanically locked to 299,999 miles. They can't go over to the 300,000 mark. So if we were selling that as a used vehicle, we'd have to mark the box that says in excess of mechanical limits. There is a kind of a gray sticky box, which is not actual. Warning odometer discrepancy is there. That's probably going to raise some real red flags to selling that used vehicle, but we'd have to disclose it if that was truly the case. And then we do have the box to mark it exempt from odometer if the vehicle is more than 10 years old. Reading isn't required at that point. The next section of the disclosure is going to cover any warranty and service contract information. So we need to disclose to those customers if there is any manufacturer warranty information or any limited extended service warranties that we're offering on that vehicle. And one neat thing about this section, just to make sure that we explain to everyone in here, is the section that says as is, no warranty. If you are selling a vehicle private party, truly that vehicle as is, no warranty applies. One little note that we've been told by the DOT inspectors, though, every time that we've had them into a class or done a discussion or took some training, if you were to truly read through the documents, actually that box is as disclosed when a licensed dealer is selling it in the state of Wisconsin. So they've accurately, to the best of their knowledge, to the reasonable care standard, must fill this form out accurately and disclose it. Even if they're not putting any type of warranties on there, if there is truly something that is marked no or marked not legal, it needs to be disclosed when it is sold by a dealership. Okay, so that's just one big note in there, and it's kind of hard and kind of puts it into lawyers' terms. That truly should read as is, as disclosed. The dealerships still must disclose the issues. They could sell a vehicle that had an issue, but they must disclose it to that customer that's buying that used vehicle itself. So kind of the warranty and service contract section. The next section of the disclosure is the used vehicle general condition, starting with the heating and cooling systems, looking at are they in good condition or no, they are not in good condition. Looking at drivetrain, looking at electrical systems, marking down what type of engine this is equipped with, gasoline, diesel, electric, or hybrid. These have all been updated as of 2018 to reflect a lot of the new vehicles that are on the road for us. We need to mark down, are there signs of excessive oil consumption, yes or no? Are there abnormal noises, signs of cracked block or cylinder head, inoperative turbos, electronic control module issues, abnormal exhaust or engine smoke, belts frayed, missing or cracked, does not include timing belt because that would require some major disassembly to be able to inspect it, changed or modified from the manufacturer specification. We're going to be checking fluid levels, gauges and warning devices, repaired damage, so is there repaired floor pans, repaired frame members and items like that. Down way on the bottom, we also are going to be checking other equipment, and this one does have a box to check not equipped if it's not equipped. But if it has ABS, we need to put, is it operational, yes or no? cruise control, air conditioning systems, in-cabin heating issues, power accessory problems, sound systems, navigations, entertainments, and spare tire or jack missing. All of these need to be marked yes or no. And as we kind of look at the back portion of the disclosure form, there's actually some definitions of what truly is a yes or no, or what needs to be inspected for this section of the vehicle. This section, though, is general condition. The next section that we'll look at is the vehicle equipment requirements. These are a little bit more of a legal, not legal. So if you read the statement up on top, to safely and legally operate this vehicle on Wisconsin highways, all items listed below must be in proper working condition according to Trans 305. So this is a legal, not legal situation, and we have to bring Trans 305 up to get our definitions and our explanations. The previous section is just a general condition. It doesn't have Trans 305 requirements in the background, but we still need to accurately disclose these items to the customer. This section actually has legal requirements through Trans 305 in the background. So according to Trans 305, we need to inspect the brake system. The brake system is the only system that requires us to disassemble or take apart to do the inspection. As we review the back portion of this disclosure form, it'll talk about the reasonable care standard, and that says in there that we don't truly need to disassemble components or take them apart for inspections other than brakes. It does call out in brakes that you're not going to be able to inspect them without some disassembly, and then it does not give another subclause or another little exemption in there that we'll talk about down the road. But we need to mark down on here after our inspection, is the brakes legal or not legal according to Trans 305? Are the bumpers, are the doors, hood and trunk lid, emissions equipment, exhaust systems, fenders, firewall, floor pan, frame or structural portion of the unibody, fuel systems, horns, lights, restraining devices and seats, speedometer, odometer, steering components, suspension, tires and wheels, windshields, windows and mirrors, and finally to end, windshield defroster, wipers, and washers. We need to look into Trans 305 and make sure that all these items are in compliance. If they are not in compliance, they need to be marked not legal or need to be basically repaired to meet those standards before we can mark them legal on the sheet. Okay? Next section of the disclosure form on the front is a small box for us to explain any items marked yes or not legal. If we mark that there is a fault in the drivetrain, yes, we need to write down what's truly going on with that drivetrain. If we mark it not legal on the exhaust system, we need to explain what is not legal. We need to disclose the true issue with the vehicle itself. These disclosure forms, you can kind of see why a lot of times when you go to a dealership, you have a new set of tires installed. We'll use that as an example. It would probably just be cheaper and easier for that dealership to install a new set of tires to make the tires and wheels section of the disclosure legal before they tried to sell the vehicle. Customers look at these disclosure forms and see a bunch of yeses marked that there's troubles or a bunch of not legals. That's going to be a very hard vehicle to sell to them. As long as we disclosed it, we actually could legally sell them a vehicle that had something not legal according to Trans 305, or we could actually sell them something that had a blown head gasket, but it would have to be disclosed on this form, and the customer would have to be made well aware of it, that it is in non-conformity or has a general issue with the vehicle itself. So a small box for us to write that. Last section of the front of the disclosure is a place for the vehicle inspector to print their name and sign, a section for the records inspector, and then a signature of the dealer or license representative. So a place for people to put their signature in and make this a legally binding document. If I were the technician filling these out and I'm signing my name, I'm going to make sure these are 100% up to snuff. There's going to be no hiding. There's going to be no gray areas. If my name's going on this particular form, I'm going to make sure it's 100% up to standards. And then same thing should be with your dealership representative and your records inspector, making sure that they're honest and ethical when they fill them out. Let's take a few minutes then and take just a quick look at the rear of the guide. The rear of the guide is basically an explanation of important consumer information and then definitions of what needs to be inspected. So if we take a quick deeper look in there, it talks about in that first section the guide. So dealerships complete the Wisconsin Buyer's Guide to report existing conditions of the used vehicle. Information on this guide is based on what the dealership can find using reasonable care. And it's going to break down what is reasonable care in the next section. The guide cannot tell you everything you need to know. They're telling the consumers to test drive the vehicle and have your own expert check the vehicle if the dealership allows. They can, with this disclosure form, disclose a whole lot about the vehicle, but there's always something that potentially could be hidden, so it'd be good to have it inspected by a third party as well. Next section of the back covers the reasonable care standards. So clearly calls out in there that dealerships are required to test drive the vehicle and to inspect the interior and exterior of the vehicle, including the underhood and the under vehicle. They are not required to take the vehicle apart, except for the brakes, or run tests unless necessary to diagnose apparent symptoms. So to kind of sum that up, we do have to take the brakes apart to be able to do an inspection there. But for the other items, we do not need to disassemble the engine to tell them that the pistons are in good shape. That just makes no sense. We need to do it from an external view without disassembly. The next section of this talks about the vehicle history and title brands, kind of showing the consumer that if it does have any vehicle history or title brands that are on that particular title for the vehicle, it must be disclosed on the disclosure form as well. Any contract agreements that are in there, it's got to be disclosed, so it's giving that consumer a little information there. The obligation to remedy undisclosed problems. If the dealerships do not disclose the problems, sell the customer a vehicle, and then the customer takes it to another facility and finds out that, hey, this thing's got a cylinder head gasket that had apparently horrible external leak, leaking oil, leaking coolant, and mixing, and that was not disclosed as they had bought that used vehicle, that dealer is going to be obligated to remedy the issue. It could get a very sticky legal situation, and that's why dealerships need to fill these out ethically, or they could be responsible to remedy the issues, maybe buy the vehicle back, maybe have to actually add the items that were disclosed improperly. So just kind of letting consumers know that they would need to remedy them. Talking about manufacturers' recalls in here, kind of explaining to those customers that if there are manufacturer recalls, they, as the consumer, need to call the manufacturers and check and see. This would be a great one to go out to that National Highway Transportation Administration and go out to the free recall check before you purchase a used vehicle and see if there are any outstanding recalls or not. Okay? They talk about your records. So they talk to the consumer about get a copy of the guide when you purchase the vehicle, keep it, and if there's any discretions, make sure that you get a hold of them through the address or the Consumer Assistance Hotline. The last section of the used vehicle disclosure on the far right and the back side of it is going to be the definitions of what is inspected. So it's going to kind of break down when we do a brake check that we need to include the rotors, pads, drums, shoes, parking brakes, and any fluid leaks. And kind of just piece by piece is going to show the consumer and also as the technician in the facility what needs to be inspected while we're filling out this disclosure form. Okay, and that's basically what we have for this particular section of the course. We looked at the front of the disclosure, we looked at the rear of the disclosure. It's now time for you to go into Blackboard, into assignments. You're going to go ahead and fill out your discussion board post and reply. You're going to go ahead and take the final exam, and in this particular discussion board in this section, you're able to put an article that you found important or relevant. You're able to ask a question, or you're able to do a little investigation with a technician that you know that has filled these out and kind of give us a little summary of what they said. There's definitely some good money to be made with these. There's definitely a good ethical thing for customers to get a vehicle that hopefully isn't a great big lemon or a great big clunker. So ultimately a good thing for consumers and definitely a good thing for us as technicians to understand as well. Those assignments will be due the following Monday by 9 o'clock, and we'll see you back for the next section of AOBO Online.